intended meaning exactly as our main idea, but our main idea is based on the author's intended meaning, and as we understand what the author was saying and the basis for why he said it, that leads us to, okay, what principle is there that we need to apply? Okay? So, that's why I put here, the exegetical idea, timeless truths, that leads us to the homiletical idea. Alright? This is on page 118 in your notes. Okay? So, with those two parts, we have a main idea. Okay? And then we have our outline. How that main idea is expressed or seen, the pieces of it in the message. Okay? This is the same that we've done for all of the genres. Now, main idea. What does that mean? I know it's
The big idea.
the big idea, yeah. Yeah, there are different names for it, right? Big idea,
The
propositional statement, some call it.
single summary. Single meaning of the entire book is.
Yeah, the main point, the sermon concept, some call it sermon concept. Chappelle calls it the fallen condition focus. There are different names for it.
Overarching.
But it's your main point. It's your key idea. If you were to summarize the whole message into that ball, what is it? I won't throw anything at you. Right? So this is really important. Can you bring it all together into that one main thought? All right? Very important. You guys have been doing really well with that. These sermons, this module, at least in our group, I've been very, it's been very good to see you guys doing that. So I think the other groups as well. Rodell, would you say your guys, have they been pretty good about a main idea? Yeah. So I've seen that's good progress, and that's important because that keeps us centered on the sermon. Where are we going with this? And what is it we want to make sure they understand? Okay? Now, we talked about there's 4 important characteristics of the main idea, and really the outline as well. There's 4 features. 2 of them are requirements. No compromising on.
Accurate.
It must be accurate. That's number 1. It must reflect the text, what's in the text. We all know that. But it's easy. It's still easy. Even we know all of this, and we've been practicing, it's still easy for us to import our own ideas or what we want the text to say. Okay? And that's the danger of picking up, deciding on a topic before you pick a passage. We can have that tendency if we're not careful. It's okay at times, right, if you want to speak on a topic and you think about, but just be aware, when you do that, you may have ideas already that you want to say, and you'll force those into the passage if you're not careful. Now, previous study or understanding of the text you may have that can guide you as you're thinking about a topic you want to discuss. But again, if you say, I think it'd really be helpful to have a series on prayer. And that's okay. But now, let the text tell you what to say about prayer. There are obvious passages, the Lord's Prayer in Matthew 6 and Luke 18 and the prayers of Paul. And so there are many texts to consider on the topic of prayer. All right? But let those passages and the authors there tell you what to say. Don't say, okay, I want to talk about prayer because our people need to be fervent in prayer and they need to be consistent and have all these ideas, and then you go to a text with all of those ideas, and you can tend to see the passage through those thoughts. Okay? So that's the caution. Topical series are fine, but just be careful that you don't let your preconceived or desired ideas you want to communicate be forced into the passage. Alright? So, let the passage speak. Alright? Now, so accuracy, number one, without question. What's the second most important? Also a requirement for the preacher, the main idea. Clear. Right? Be clear. Accurate means you understand the passage. Clear means you now help your hearers understand the passage correctly. So clarity. So that's why we're spending all this time, and talking about the introduction, get the attention, surface the need, state your main point, and then in the body of the sermon, as you transition between each point, state the point, the proof, picture, the plan, persuasion, and then restate the point as you go to the next point. That's clarity. That's helping us follow you, explaining the text. Just go through it. And again, I was very blessed and encouraged in our group. The guys there did a really good job of doing that. I think everybody in our group, each sermon, we've been able to follow. So that's really important, right? Because we know how that is. If you're listening to a sermon and either you get distracted or you just, what's this guy talking about? Or where did he get that from? Or, then you can get lost in the whole message. But a clear sermon keeps bringing people back. They can follow you. They know where you're going. And so that's very important. Because if you're accurate, that's good. But if you're not clear, then you may be helped by the passage, but you're not helping. I'm saying this as a joke, but don't make the Holy Spirit work harder, all right? All right? I hope you know what I mean by that, right? He's obviously doing all the work, but be an easier instrument to use in the process. Okay, yeah, be a sharp knife, not one he's got, this guy, Milton, man, I have to work harder with you. You're not being clear. So, the Holy Spirit can use anybody, anytime, any situation, but we want to be faithful instruments. And so, to do that, we want to be accurate, we want to be clear. All right, these are non-negotiable requirements. Okay? The next two are not, I would say, at the same level here, but they're important and they'll be helpful in making it an effective message. What's the third? Directed. Okay? What does that mean? Or we might say applicable. So yeah, connecting it to your hearers. So either making it in the form of an imperative to do this, or noting, using the second person personal pronoun you. Don't make it general or vague, or talk about Paul or David's path to purity. No, don't do that. Make it more directed to us today. Right? How you can be pure. Or pray fervently, or something like that. Even so, just try to make it more directed. Again, this isn't a mandate. You don't have to do this every sermon, but just be thinking that way. How is it directed more to my hearers? Okay? Now, obviously, you can direct inside the sermon as you explain and apply and all those things. But having a main point and even the outline directed is I think more helpful. Okay? And then the fourth, memorable. Again, not a requirement like the first two, but it's helpful if you can have a point, main idea that's easy to remember, that would be helpful. So instead of saying something like, how to keep God's word so that we can have wisdom, that's one that is sort of directed. How can we keep God's word? But it's not really memorable. So make it memorable, right? Pursue wisdom. That's simple, but pursue wisdom. Pursue wisdom from the word. That will be something easier to remember, and it's easy to repeat as you go through the sermon, right? As you get to each point. So pursue wisdom through the word. Firstly, by spending time in the word, or asking God for wisdom. And then, second way we pursue wisdom through the word is, so easy to repeat because it's short, and then easy to follow. And after you repeated it all the way through the sermon, easy to remember. Okay, so that's why we have, at least for the English, words that might start with the same letter or something like that. We're not trying to be clever, but we want to be helpful in remembering. Okay? So, main idea and the outline points also need the same characteristics. The one additional feature of the outline points is make sure they're connected to the main idea. All right, in some way. So, like for example, pursue wisdom through the word first by asking God for wisdom. All right. So notice I connect. And the second way to pursue wisdom through the word is to study the word. And so the outline points just connect to the main point. Okay? All right. I think we all know that. I just want to reinforce it. Now, as we look to the prophetic books, it's going to depend on what the style of the passage is. If it's sermonic, if it's direct, we're going to have, remember that we talked before, the deductive and inductive sermons. So if it's a sermon, it's going to be more direct. But you're going to have visions. I don't mean you'll have visions. Your passage is going to be a vision. Zechariah and also in Revelation. And so the nature of those texts then is it's going to be more of a narrative style as you present the passage. Like a narrative, right? We just go through the scenes, we go through the story, and we sort of lead people to the main point, inductive. Well, that's going to be similar on these passages, because you're going to have a vision. Again, the text will be a vision that you're going to be explaining. So you're going to present it more like you would a narrative. You don't have to, but I think it'll flow better, because it's going to be some image that Zechariah or John sees, and you'll describe the image. I'll talk more about that when we get to the actual preaching prophecy. So you're still going to have a main idea. You still have something, a key idea, main point for your hearers, and there may be structure to it. Remember, like the narrative, you get to that main point, toward the end normally, and then you might have 3 outline points at that time. But the first part of the narrative, you're just telling the story. And once you've told the story, hopefully you've led the people to the main idea or main point from that story. And then that's where you'll focus attention on what the main point is, how it applies, and you may You know, like for example, if you're preaching from Jonah, right? And what's the main point of Jonah? God's compassion for the lost. So let's say you're preaching chapter 4 and you get to that point and it's clear the main message, the main idea is God's compassion for the lost. But it's really, do you have compassion for the lost, right? And so you might have, you might decide like three ways to demonstrate God's compassion to the lost. Okay? So you won't give that at the beginning. You'll tell the story. And then you lead them to the main idea of the story, which is God wanted us to see his compassion. First Jonah, but also us. And so that's going to be the main focus, the main point. And then you may decide you want to identify how do we show compassion in our words, how do we show compassion in our deeds, or something like that. And that's perfectly fine to do. You're taking the main idea of the story and now applying it to your hearers, directing it to them. Okay? So I'll come back to that when we discuss the visions. Whole point being, no matter whether you have a deductive sermon, where you have the main idea up front and go through the outline, or an inductive sermon, where you lead them to the main idea, you still have to have a main idea that you articulate and repeat that summarizes the key focus of the message. Okay? Questions on that?
Question.
Yes, sir.
My exposure has always been Haddon Robinson's template on subject and complement. But in my experience with Dea, it is more open to the shape of the text. Because for example, the text cannot be encapsulated with one question, one implied question, right? Because Haddon Robinson, you need to come up with one implied question and one answer for you to have the main
Yeah, I think he's
yes, I mean idea.
kind of aiming toward that. Can you summarize the thrust of the key idea of the message?
So it won't be a buckshot, but it will be
Yeah.
a very targeted sermon.
Yes.
But my question to you, Dr. Tim, is how come we're not applying it, or we're not using that? Is there a disadvantage? Is there an advantage? Or like?
Yeah, I think maybe you answered the question at the beginning. Is trying not to limit or box in the passage. Because we aren't given everything in propositional form, right? We have narratives, for example. So we want to understand the main idea. There's a main focus there, and then communicate that in our message. But there wasn't like an intentional, well, let's not do it that way. Let's not do it.
Yeah, I have
Okay, but I think the idea is wanting to just let the text be our guide as far as leading us to the main idea of the passage. And I think some guys have taken a step further and they kind of forced a formatting.
Yes, the
mechanics of it. And so I think there's value in that, because he's wanting to keep us, aimed, like you said, not a buckshot, but a single bullet. Like my seminary professor would always say, one shot, one kill. So aimed on a specific. So I think it's just kind of ended up going that direction. I don't think we intentionally negated other, like we don't do the fallen condition focus either. Exactly, kind of box in the passage a little bit. in my view.
Okay.
But it's helpful. The things that he brings up, consider that. He's really focusing on the need to be directed. Right, with that. Ken Robinson's focusing on the need to be accurate and clear and focused. So that you're clear so we can understand what the main point is.
How about truth complemented by response kind of format? For example, what is true, the text, and then what to do.
Yeah, and that's kind of what the intent is here. When you say applicable, trying to direct it to your hearers what to do with this, how to respond to it.
For example, because the beginning of is because since our heart are wicked, we must guard it. Can we do that?
We must what?
We must diligently guard it.
Yeah, guard.
Yeah. So the truth is because since our heart is
Right.
wicked, the second complement is
Yeah, the application is to guard.
Yeah. So what is true? What is true in the text, and then what to do about it? Especially
Yeah.
individuals.
Yeah. And you could just say, you could have the main point be guard your heart. And then the sermon, you'll explain, the text will show us why. So you're still grabbing the main point of the text, and now you're directing it in your sermon. And that's a key difference. The exegetical idea surfaces the author's main point. The sermon idea or main idea directs that point to my hearers. So it could be very applicational. It has to be based on the truth of the passage. Okay? That's the importance of the explanation, all those things we talked about. But yeah, preaching is more than just informing of what's in the passage. It's also the persuasion, do something with this. It's like Jesus at the end of the Sermon on the Mount, right? He didn't just close in prayer and walk away. He said, right? He talked about, blessed are you if you hear these words of mine. If you respond, if you listen, you're like the wise man who builds his house on the rock. If you don't, right? So there was clearly the intent Jesus had was they respond to it. That you do something with it. And so I think as teachers, as preachers, we're not just giving out information and teaching about Bible stories and passages. There's intent, don't just be hearers, but be doers. So we want to help in that process. That's why Paul tells Timothy, reprove, rebuke, exhort with great patience. Because preaching wasn't just tell them what the text says, it was push it in to their lives and then pull them towards a response. And again, that was that word exhort there, parakaleo, come alongside to help, either through exhortation or through encouragement. So that's why I think I didn't put this at the same level, but your sermon must be persuasive. You must be calling for a response. Whether you do that in the main idea, I think that's helpful to do that, but you definitely must do that in the message. That's part of Paul's command to preach the word. When he said that, he didn't just mean explain it, and also compel to respond. And as we accurately and clearly explain it, the Holy Spirit works in such a way to make that happen. He gives understanding and motivation to respond to it. All right? Do you have a...
Yes, in the inductive approach of preaching, it's clear to me that we still arrive at the main idea.
Yes.
What I still try to wrap my head around is how we do that. Like you say, it's by stanzas, right? Instead of outline points. Does each stanza build up, does each scene build up to the main idea, or or is it possible that one scene, and should you relate the principles in each scene to the main idea, or is there a build-up?
No, again, the nature of stories is different, right? Stories are, we get details, events, statements, narrator information, and it's kind of like, to me, a story is like you're walking along the path and there's pebbles that you pick up on the way. And once you have the handful of pebbles, you can see the main point. That's the plot. The plot reveals, so the plot carries sort of, there's a structure. But it's not like, okay, scene 1 is going to be point 1 of the main idea, and scene 2, point 2. No, but we'll learn things, we'll see, hear, read things in scene 1 that then scene 2 adds more to it, but it's developing that, the problem is revealed, then the rising action, we get to a climax, the resolution, falling action. So all of that is how a story is built, but you need the whole story to see that unfold. And normally it's in that order. You'll have a problem kind of near the beginning, and then you'll have the way they try to resolve the problem, and then it gets to the point right at the point the problem is addressed. So that would be the sequence.
So the principles we draw out in each scene should be tied to the plot.
To the plot.
Okay.
Because the plot reveals the main idea.
Okay.
Now, sometimes an author might construct a story in such a way that it kind of follows sort of an outline. One doesn't come to mind right away. But you're really concerned more with the plot. And so studying the setting, the scenes, and the characters help us to understand the plot. And we don't know the plot of the story until we know the whole story. Okay? And so then once you understand the whole story, the plot leads us to the main idea. And then I said from that main idea, you may have, as the preacher or teacher, an outline that follows that. Or like you see, God's compassion. We see God's compassion in 3 ways in this story. That's how I preach Jonah. I'll preach the story, get to the main idea, and then I'll go back and say, okay, notice where we see it. We see God's compassion first in the sailors. Then we see his compassion with Jonah. Then we see his compassion with the Ninevites. And then Jonah again. So there is kind of an outline in that way. It's all centered around, though, the main. So I wouldn't say, okay, God's compassion is infinite. We see that in the first story. God's compassion is just. And, that would be me sort of kind of importing the idea. But as far as the author, I don't think he does it that way there. But he does sort of demonstrate examples of God's compassion all the way through the story.
So you would make application only after having presented?
Yes. Yeah.
No application at all?
Not necessarily. Now, sometimes in the story, as you're going through, you may see something that a character does or says that is maybe a helpful example. Or like if you're teaching through the Gospels, and Jesus is giving instruction, the things he says, it's always important to pay attention to. So he may have particular insights, like the Samaritan woman in John 4. He has a lot of, he addresses true worship there. We see his deity and his humanity in that story. There are different elements. The main point of that story is Jesus was sent to the lost, and so he wants to make the disciples aware they too are sent, and to all peoples. But we do see other aspects in the story that are helpful instruction. So you might stop a minute and say, notice here what Jesus says about true worship. So you could maybe give a few insights there. Now that's not the main point of the story, but certainly that's something we can learn on the way. So I would, yeah, make that clear. Now let's just take a minute here. Notice what Jesus says to her about true worship. You know, you can sort of give a short, or expand that into a whole series later. So it's perfectly fine to identify. You'll identify certain pebbles on the way that actually have some nuggets of truth there that you want to communicate. But I don't favor treating a story like just focusing all on those propositional statements all the way through, or doctrinal truths all the way through, because then you miss the point of the story. So yeah, the plot is your guide. And so that's again what's going to make Zechariah and Revelation a little bit challenging. Is it's kind of narrative features, narrative style, but it's not like a plot necessarily. But I'll jump to that later. 119. Let's go 119. Here we have an example where from our Haggai text, Haggai 2, 1-9, I have a few examples of a sermon main point. Are you taking selfies over there? All right. Okay, if you can do it, I can do it. All right, everybody. 1, 2, 3.
Last day.
All right. 4. Module 4. Last day. Okay. All right. So further study of the text led me to see the idea here of, God wanted them to rebuild the temple because it was part of His overarching plan through the Messiah to reign and redeem through the Messiah. So I really saw a lot of Great Commission focus there. All right? And so, like to God, this temple was important. Why? Because as we go through Zechariah, it's clear that He is directing, wants to show my glory is going to be greater. I have a plan here. And I want you to be part of this plan by building this temple. Okay? So I had the idea that the sermon main point is not going to be, hey, build a temple or a building project necessarily. All right? But it's really about God's mission. And are you a part of His mission, or have you neglected it like the people did? They were sent back to build the temple and they stopped. And so I had a different one. Make His mission your mission. To me, that was kind of the one that probably is the most memorable. It's directed, right? And the M's there. Or don't give up on His mission. That one's directed. A little more applicational. Don't give up. Or is God and His mission your priority? God and His plan your priority? So notice there I put it in the form of a question, which is fine to do. The last one, this one's even shorter. Advance God's agenda. I like the mission one better because I'm going to tie it into like the Great Commission and our need to stay focused on, really whatever ministry God has given you to do.
So that
Fulfill it.
the EI doctor team is, where's that? What's the example of your EI?
The exegetical idea.
Yes,
It was
Haggai exhorts the people to
rebuild the temple. And I think I neglected to have a good why there. So it wasn't the best. Because of God's presence and His plan. So notice the whole focus is there, rebuild the temple. Because of God's presence, His plan, and I would have added, in their discouragement. Because of verse 3. Remember we said, does it seem like nothing before? So their temptation to want to give up. But yeah, as I further examined it, I realized that that was the main point. Haggai was exhorting them to rebuild and with the encouragement of God's presence and not to give up. But then the bigger picture, not only of Haggai 2:1-9, but again recognizing it in the flow of the whole book.
So I think the key here to arrive to the homiletical point is understanding the significance of the temple as it relates to
Yes.
God's overarching plan.
Yes.
So that is something that I want to ask because you asked us.
Yeah, and so we see that in the flow of that text, right? When he talks about my glory will fill the temple, and right, my glory will be greater than in the former. So there's this. He's aiming it towards like, look, I want this temple rebuilt because I'm going to display, glorify myself through it. And then I think the way that happens is revealed in the last message that will be coming through the Messiah.
So it's the symbolic. The temple is symbolic or literal?
No, there was going to be a literal. God will literally receive greater glory, be revealed from him and through him and to him by this temple being completed. There's something about the temple was important to him in his receiving glory. Alright? So how that would be, the details are not laid out fully there in the text. But that's not the point. It's like, do this because I'm going to use this temple is going to further reveal or magnify or have a greater glory than before. Okay? And like I said, I think we're given a hint at the end when he ends the book by speaking to Zerubbabel and saying, I'll make you a signet ring, the branch he's going to become. Alright, so this really again recognizes not only the text itself, but you're trying to place that passage within the flow of the book as well. So really understand, it's like Philemon. If you're going to preach from Philemon, you've got to understand, well, any book, you've got to understand the flow of the book. But say, for example, you go to his prayer in Philemon 4. Forgot who read yesterday. Let's start back. Mel, you want to read? Just read 4 to 7. Philemon, yeah.
I think my God always make you mention during my prayers because I feel of your love and faith which you have toward the Lord Jesus Christ, the Lord Jesus and toward all the saints. And I pray that the fellowship of your faith may become effective to the full knowledge of every good thing which is in you for the sake of Christ. For I have got to have much joy and comfort in your love, because the hearts of the saints are refreshed through you, brothers.
All right, so here this is Paul's prayer, Philemon, and it might sound like, if you were preaching this passage, I focus on praying for one another, the importance of one another's testimony, and then notice he says, I pray the fellowship of your faith may become effective. So what is that? Well, I think we can only understand what that phrase means by understanding the whole letter. What's this fellowship or sharing of your faith? He's not talking about evangelism here. He's talking about an expression of his faith being lived out in his life. But it's a specific expression. Welcoming, receiving, forgiving Philemon, right? And so the whole letter is an appeal from Paul to Philemon to receive back Onesimus not as a slave but as a brother. And so then what is it about this fellowship, this sharing of the faith within the community of believers there in Colossae? There's a specific way he can demonstrate that. So he's not just giving a general statement, just some, oh, may the fellowship of your faith become effective. Well, what does that mean?
Yeah, what is that?
It's not a general statement that just sounds, lofty. He's actually saying, there's something here I'm requesting of you, and I want you to be an example to encourage the unity amongst the saints there in the church. The fellowship of your faith, the sharing of your faith, the faith you have in common with the other believers. I want that faith to be effective by you responding to what I'm about to request from you. So as you preach this passage, you have to understand what's going on in the whole letter to accurately communicate what he's saying here. Okay? So I'm just saying that with any text you have, just remember, it's part of a broader message. Flow of thought, right? Purpose of the book. So again, we want to remember that. So as you look at your vision that you have assigned to you, remember, don't disconnect it from the flow. How does it connect to what came before, to what came after? What is the broader message that it is a part of? You're going to find, very interesting, I think Zechariah is one of the most Christ-centered, gospel-oriented Old Testament books. Jesus is the Messiah is all through there. Alright, so I think you will see that if you're careful to study and see how does that unfold. Okay, so this was just an example that your text don't just isolate it so much that you disconnect it from the flow of the book. So that's why in Haggai, I had the idea of make his mission your mission, that it's not just finishing the temple, but there's a reason God wants them to finish that temple. And it's because this is part of his mission through the Messiah to establish his reign and redemption of his people. Now, we don't get all that detail in Haggai, but again, more broadly speaking, we see that's part of what's going on here. So speaking to the church, I bring those things in. Okay? Now, go back on your notes on page 119 there. I also include the outline, the homiletical, as part of the homiletical idea. Be encouraged by God's presence. Be encouraged by God's plan. Alright, because remember, the first 5 verses focused on what was the motivation to them to stay, to be diligent, to finish the temple, was his presence, right? I'm abiding with you. He said, my Spirit's abiding with you. I am with you. And then verses 6 to 10, he's telling them, I have a plan for this temple. And you're a part of that plan. Just rebuild it. So again, same for us. Even think about the Great Commission. Was there any part of that Jesus said, I am with you? Right? So there's some connections there. Okay? Alright, so again, the homiletical idea is key, because that's going to be your guide in your sermon. And then writing out the sermon manuscript. And again, in your notes, the focus, again, remember, the sermon needs to be accurate and clear. Now, in your notes, the structure of the sermon I have there is more from like the deductive approach. You have the introduction, you have the body, the outline points. Each point is a point, proof, picture, plan, problem, etc., persuasion. Now, that may be a little bit different with the Zechariah and Revelation sermons because, again, they're more narrative style. So keep that in mind. You still need introduction. Still need to get the attention, draw us in, lead us to the passage. related to the topic, but then how you unfold the text, what I want to talk about next. All right? But let's go ahead at this point. Let me just introduce, make a comment, then we'll take a break. All right? Page 117, or 122, sorry. I have some comments about preaching prophecy. I've already mentioned this, but you have to be mindful of the genre in which the text is given and preach accordingly. Again, meaning, you have a sermon, then it'll be direct, deductive, just like an epistle. There'll be an outline, a structure. If you have that delivered in poetic fashion, then you'll have features of poetry you'll need to incorporate. You'll have images. You'll have figurative language. If you have narrative features, then you're going to have to consider, you may need to tell or explain, or go through the passage more like you would a narrative. Okay? And that's going to be the case for Zechariah and Revelation. Because in Zechariah, he presents, as I said, 8 visions that were intended to encourage and motivate the people to rebuild the temple. So Haggai gave these 4 sermons. Zechariah only had one short sermon right at the beginning, verses 1 to 6. And then he goes into these 8 visions that he's given from God for the people to encourage them. And so they're visions. That means it's a scene that he describes. Okay? And so you're going to need to take that into account as you go through them. So this is how I want you to do it. Explain the vision first. So what does he see? You can tell it like a story. Okay, there's a scene in front of him. What is it? And then, what is the significance of that scene to the original audience? Meaning, the features in that scene, how would the original audience have perceived or understood or recognized those features? Not what you think about them, but what would how would they have connected with the original audience? Because again, remember, that's Zechariah's audience is not us. The original audience was people of Judah who had just come out of the exile 16 years or so prior, who stopped building the temple because of laziness, because of discouragement. And so he's speaking to them. People living in the late 6th century BC Jerusalem. Okay, so how would they have recognized, perceived, or understood the various aspects of the scene? So like in Zechariah 1, it talks about the man in the myrtle trees. Myrtle's a type of tree in Israel. And I've seen sermons or commentaries where they go into the myrtle tree symbolizes Israel and all this and that. Well, no, it's just a common tree in Israel. And that's where they gather. And myrtle trees are mentioned to emphasize they're in Israel. And so these horses then, and again, remember, he's had the red horse, the sorrel horse, the white horse. I don't know that there's any significance there. They're just horses going out on patrol. So what significance would that have for that original audience? Well, the Darius, as well as other kings, would often send out patrols to see what was going on in the kingdom, to survey. Because they didn't have, phones or Facebook or anything where they could report right away. They would, usually you'd have to send couriers or whatever, so they would send out patrols to just survey and see what's going on. Are there any issues? Okay, and by the way, at that time there was a lot of uprising and upheaval. Extra biblical documents tell us. that time. So, but look at it and the scene and what's being described, try to do it through the eyes of the original audience, is the point. Zechariah 4, he's describing elements in the temple. How did they understand what was going on in the temple? I mentioned to you yesterday the example of the menorah, that the priest would normally restore the oil, but in this scene there's no priest, it's just these pipes directly from an olive tree. Now they couldn't set that up, right? That couldn't really happen where they figured out how the olive tree they can just automate, have a machine there pulling the oil out. But that's not the point. There was a picture being described there to communicate something to the original audience. Okay? So that's your goal. First, just describe the scene and tell it like a story, interesting, draw us in, help us see it. And then, what is the impact or connection to the original audience? What did it mean to them? And then you'll say, okay, now how is that connected to us? So really explaining the vision, finding the point of the vision as it would be directed to the original audience, and then you can step back and say, okay, based on that message to them, what is the message or connection to us? And I'll give you an example in the next session from Zechariah 5, just to give you an idea. You're going to do the same thing in Revelation. All right? Okay, let's take a break here. Yeah, maybe around 10:30ish or so. 10:30, 10:35. So let's take a break and we'll come back. We'll go through an example from Zechariah, discuss some of the class details. So make sure to be here for that as well. Okay? And then, Lord willing, we'll be done with our lectures by lunch. After lunch, we'll do our labs. Okay? So then you'll be able to go home earlier today. Okay? All right. So, let's take a break. We'll see you back here in about 10 minutes.
And I am praying, Lord, that you remove all the things that is not as from listening and studying. Thank you, Jesus, for this opportunity. I pray that you will experience your personality. In Jesus' name I pray.
Amen.
All right. Amen. Okay. So what I'd like to do is go through an example from Zechariah just to give you an idea, prepare you for your passage. And again, the focus is, as you look at the vision, first explain it. What's the picture? Describe it to us, like a narrative style. And then what's the significance or importance of that picture to the original audience? What would they have understood from it? What is the meaning? What was the meaning of it? And then, how does that connect to us today? So it's kind of your approach is going to be that. So I want to look at Zechariah's 6th vision as an example. And so you want to understand first the position of your vision in these 8. Alright, so what happened before it, after. So you'll be doing that when you look at the contextual flow, when you do that assignment. You're going to summarize each vision just in a sentence. You'll see that there. I'll show you the assignments a little bit later. Alright, so far, up to the first 5 visions have focused on God's affirming his commitment to his people, his promise through the Messiah he would forgive and protect them and dwell with them. And so these are the first 5 visions focused on that. The 6th vision takes a little bit of a turn. Kind of like in Haggai, there was a turn. We had the first sermon was repent, get to work. The second sermon was don't be discouraged, I'm with you. And then the third sermon, he talks about the people's need for holiness. That though they were impure, it would still accomplish this work. That's kind of what happens here with these visions. The first 5 are more idea of encouragement, God's with his people. But then the 6th vision sort of takes a similar turn. So what I'm going to do is have us read it. You'll see the pattern in these visions, and then we'll go through it together just briefly. So I'm going to ask Daryl, or no, we started in the back, didn't we? So this is going to be Edwin. You're going to read this for us, brother. Just read the 4 verses here.
Then I lifted my eyes again and saw, and behold, a lying scroll. And he said to me, What do you see? And I said, I see a lying scroll. Its length is 30 cubits and its width 10 cubits. And he said to me, This is the curse that is going forth over the face of the whole land. Surely everyone who steals will be purged away according to the writing on one side, and everyone who swears will be purged away according to the writing on the other side. I will make it go forth, declares Yahweh of hosts, and it will be enter the house of the thief and the house of one who swears falsely by my name, and it will be spent the night within the house and consume it with its timber and stones.
All right. So you might think, okay, what is this about? What's going on here? And then how is this going to apply to the church? Right? Well, first, we want to just explain the scene. So again, at this point, we've done all the study, all right? I'm just sort of skipping ahead here because I want to help you understand how to explain or how to go through the passage, okay? So first just notice the pattern. I lifted my eyes and saw. That's going to be a typical introduction to a new vision. And behold, a flying scroll. And there's going to be an angel that he converses with through these visions. He said, what do you see? He said, I see a flying scroll, right? Its length is 20 cubits, its width 10 cubits. All right, so that's going to be there'll be a scene. Now this scene's very short. It's just what? What's the picture here? A large flying scroll. Flying, so it's through the air. And how big is it? 20 cubits and 10 cubits. Now a cubit was about a foot and a half. So about 30 feet long, 15 feet wide. Okay, I don't know, this room probably, so about this wide, and then all the way into the hallway, 30 feet long. So it's not your typical scroll. However, though, the scroll of Isaiah that they found the Dead Sea Scrolls was 24 feet long. And they actually have found some Egyptian scrolls that were over 100 feet long. But a significant difference here, and something that the people of that day would understand, because usually a scroll was less than a foot wide, maybe a little longer. So 15 feet by 30 would be very unusual. But those dimensions match the size of the holy place. In front of the Holy of Holies, you know where they had the, and then what are they building? Temple. So it's probably no accident. Again, there is a link in that way. So again, how would the people have understood this? Well, one, they know what a scroll is, and what would have been unusual to them of this scroll was the width and those specific dimensions. He didn't just say a massive scroll. He gives us specific length and width of this thing. Okay? So, and he then adds, so you would explain this, right? He says what it means here in verse 3. So the first 2 verses really just describe what he sees. It's just scroll just flying over the land, and it's this size. So, you know, it'd be very visible and evident to everybody. Verse 3, he mentions then what's on the scroll. A curse going forth over the land. Everyone who steals will be purged away. Everyone who swears will be purged away according to the writing on the other side. Now again, think like they would. What other document or writing was written on both sides? The law, the stone tablets. You go back to Exodus 32. Yeah, 32:15. Moses turned and went from the mountain, and the 2 tablets of the testimony were in his hand, tablets which were written on both sides. Now this flying scroll going through the air with writing on both sides. One side, it condemns those who steal. The other side, those who swear. And if we go back to notice verse 4. How are they swearing? The one who swears falsely by my name. They're taking the Lord's name in vain. Yeah. So, a commandment. But, by the way, it's important to understand. In the days of the Exodus, treaties or commitments made, contracts made, were often written with 2 copies. One for you, one for me. So the 10 words, the 10 commandments, were likely a copy. It's written on both sides. One copy for God, the other for the people. Some think that may be the case, right? But in any event, it was written on both sides. And so you have, what commandment was not to take the Lord's name in vain? Second or third, right? We had no other gods before me, no idols, don't take my name in vain, keep the Sabbath. How about stealing? 7 or 8, right? Don't remember the order. So you have one commandment from each side of the Decalogue. Right? The first 4 were focused on commandments related to a vertical relationship, and then the next 6 are on a horizontal, right? Honor your father and mother, don't murder, don't steal. So you have one commandment from each side. Is there a connection? Keep that in mind. Again, things like this. It's written on both sides. The original hearers made that connection. Like the law was on both sides. And the content of the law. Now all the commandments aren't listed here. Okay? And perhaps stealing and swearing were a prominent sin that was taking place. But we have to also consider maybe these are representative of the whole Mosaic covenant. Okay? And that's the way I think it's going that direction as I studied this text. Okay, so you've got this flying scroll. You've got written on one side condemnation of those who steal, the other those who swear falsely by God's taken the Lord's name in vain. And it's sort of floating over the earth as hovering over, as it's watching and condemning those who are participating in these activities. Okay? Yeah, I think, stealing was the 8th commandment. That's what I have written in my notes here. And then the Lord's name, taking the Lord's name was the 3rd commandment. All right? Now, remember, when it says going over the land, the whole land, keep in mind the context here. Some might translate that whole earth, it's the same word, right? I think aretz. So it can be land or earth. But and keep in mind the context here, it's focused on Judah, right? Jerusalem. People are back. I think this is it's going over the face of, their land. That's why I think land's a good translation here. And the idea, right, is it's going over the land of Israel. And so there's this message being scrolled across the sky that those who are violating the covenant will be taken out of the land, will be judged, removed, cut off, right? Purged away. And even more than that, this scroll, so to speak, will enter the house of the thief, the one who swears, the one violating the covenant, and will spend the night, consume it with timbers and stones. This was a common practice in those days. You remember Nebuchadnezzar, when he said, if anyone refuses to worship Yahweh, their house will be made into a rubbish heap? That's what that is. Actually, it was, and then I think Cyrus even made a similar decree. Or no, it was, when it was to rebuild the temple in Ezra, it's mentioned that when, was it Darius? I forgot. Yeah, I think Darius, when he said they will rebuild the temple, if anyone stops them, your house will be turned into a rubbish heap. So that was a common, they would come in, and not only would you be taken away, your whole family would be kicked out, your whole home, everything would be destroyed. You're just wiped off the map. That's what the idea is here. It's a statement of judgment, right? So notice here, what then would be the message of this vision? What would the people understand or gather from this? Right? Consequences for unfaithfulness to the covenant. Specifically, stealing and swearing, but I don't think that would be, it's okay you're committing adultery. It's okay that you beat up your neighbor. It's okay you get drunk all the time. Just don't steal or swear. I don't think that's the idea here. I think it's more comprehensive. So notice, it's kind of similar to that pattern in Haggai. There's encouragement, but now there's a call for faithfulness to the covenant, for holiness. Right? For the people to be a holy people. Okay? So it's kind of like, it's interesting, the picture here, this is how I would describe it going through it. Like you have this scroll with these words on it, it's hovering over the land, and when it sees somebody in violation, it swoops down and attacks. That's the picture in verse 4. Enters into the house. So it's hovering, then enters into the house of those who are violating and brings judgment. They're cut off and their house is destroyed. Alright, so I think that's the idea, the vision here being conveyed. And so I think the picture here is they're called to purity. They're called to be faithful to the covenant. Okay? That, yes, you're rebuilding the temple, performing God's work, but He's not just interested in the building being built. He's interested in the workers, being the right workers as well. You starting to see any possible connection to us? Any principle there that might apply to us? Right? So they're going about God's work. At the same time, God wants them to remain faithful to Him. Okay? So it's not just the task that matters. It's the hearts of the people as well. Again, just like in Haggai, that third message. Okay, so as you think about, the picture here, you describe it, it's scrolling scroll, writing on both sides, and when it sees someone that is violating the commands, it swoops in. How would they understand it? Again, the dimensions, the writing on both sides, the reference to the commandments. Okay? So those would be all part of the first part. What's its meaning? What's the significance to the people? Their need to be holy, to be faithful to the covenant. Okay, then, now you're ready to, okay, so what's the connection? What's the point here? And given all that I just said, what would you say? What's the connection to the church, to God's people today, believers? Are we supposed to be faithful to the covenant, Mosaic covenant? Is that what this is calling us to do? No, remember that Mosaic covenant's been replaced.
Christ, a new covenant.
In the new covenant, right? But does the principle of holiness,
Yes.
does that still apply?
Yes.
Yes, that's a timeless truth, isn't it? And so what I did with this text is basically said it's the same idea today. God still wants his people to be pure. Matthew 18. And if you're not, what does he do? Matthew 18, one example. Jesus says, right? If he will not repent, then he is to be treated as Gentile attack. He's to be put out of the church, purged, cut off, right? So I went through several examples, like 1 Corinthians 5. Remember the man who was sleeping with his stepmother? Or his mother-in-law? I can't remember, one of the two. Stepmother. And church wasn't doing anything about it. And Paul just says, get rid of him, get him out of the church. Purge. Right? Titus 3:10, right? Talks about the one that is the factious man. He says, right? Give one warning, then a second. If he won't listen, put him out. Romans 16:17 says, turn away from those who cause dissension. 2 Thessalonians 3 says, those who reject the truth do not associate with that person. So there's this idea of God wanting his bride to be pure and to purge impurity out. I think it's the same picture here. He wants his people who are rebuilding the temple, he wants them to be pure. And any that are not, he wants to be purged out. He wants a holy people. He's always wanted that. So that'd be the principle I would draw on. The main idea would be God wants a pure church. And you say, wait a minute, this text has nothing to do with the church. The church isn't here. Well, that's correct. But the underlying timeless truth is he wants a pure people. Okay? And we see that principle explained several times in the New Testament. I gave you some examples of that already. So those would be what I would focus attention on. Well, 1 Corinthians 5:11. I'm writing to you not to associate with any so-called brother if he's a sexually immoral person, or greedy, or idolater, or vile, or drunkard, or swindler, not even to eat with such a one. Remove the wicked from a man from among yourselves. So that this principle is all throughout the New Testament as well. Now there's a process, right? There's a call to repentance. But if a person refuses, he says, put them out of the church. I want a pure people. Okay? So I think if there's anything this vision shows us is that God will purge sinners from among his people. Matthew 13, the wheat and the tares, right? You see that as well. So there are many passages you could connect to with this. But the idea is basically don't be a tare. Okay, so that's how I would treat this vision. So explain the vision, point out details or things that will be significant to the original audience. Then what's the meaning, the point of the vision to them. And then knowing that, what principle is being applied there that would also connect to us. Okay? Now this vision was particularly challenging. why there's a lot of exegesis that went into this thing. But, and it's even harder, the next one. After the flying scroll, then he sees an ephah, like a pot, and there's a lady that's stuffed in it. It's named Wickedness. And it's like, then two women come out. It's really, that one's even harder. What is going on here? So, okay, but do the same thing with yours. You'll have a vision. It's going to probably, the ones you have will be a little more detailed. So you'll have a little more explanation as far as painting the picture. What is the scene? But then do the same approach. Describe the scene. What does he see? And then in the text it'll have, the angel will say often, or Zechariah will say, what is this? And again, he knows what it is. He doesn't know the significance of it. In this vision, the angel just asked him, what do you see? But the other ones, he'll just go, what is this? He'll see what's there and describe it, but then he doesn't know why he's being shown that. And so the angel will explain it to him. Okay? And then often there'll be some things stated at the end, principles that'll help guide you as to the point of that vision. Alright? Now some of the visions, it's just one scene, but some of the passages you guys will have maybe more than one part. Okay? So you'll have to, again, use some skill and your experience to pay attention to that. There may be more than one section to consider. For example, Zechariah 4, it's a little bit longer text, but he's given a vision of things inside of the temple, the olive trees. I've explained that. And then notice verse 4, Zechariah says, what are these, my Lord? Again, he knows, he's explained everything in it. He's just like, I don't get what this is supposed to mean. So the angel speaking said, you don't know? He said, no. And he answered and said, this is, and then he gives the point of the picture, but you'll have to connect. What is it about the picture that leads to that point? Okay? And then notice verse 8, also the word of the Lord came to me. So in Zechariah 4, he's given two statements by the angel. So you'll have to pay attention to that, those of you that have this text. Okay? So there's another message there. It's connected. If I go to Zechariah 3, some of you have this passage. Zechariah 3, which is probably my favorite Old Testament passage. So you'll have a picture being described there. Alright? And then so you'll have, it's really seen, there's some dialogue, there's some back and forth, so you'll need to explain it that way. Okay? And then we have commentary at the end. So you'll have to follow that. It's in a few pieces. Okay? But if you have like Zechariah 1, 18, okay? We just have, it's just a few verses that's describing these, seeing the horns, and then he said, what are these coming to do? So again, he's like, what's going on here? And then there's just one short statement. So that's just one scene, one picture. Alright? Let me look at Zechariah 6. Alright, you have the chariots. They're described again. Notice, he sees them, and then, okay, what are these, my Lord? Again, okay, I know they're horses, but what's the significance? And then the angel explains it, what they are. Alright? And this one, there are colored horses, and they go out in certain directions. Okay? So, that's a common pattern. Now, there is, some of you may have 6:9, that's going to be a little different. God tells him to go do something and then explains why. But again, narratival form. You're going to tell us what's going on, And then what's the significance for the original audience? How does it apply to us? Okay? And you'll have a similar pattern in Revelation. Now my plan is to, I'll try to hold some Zoom classes, either record it or do it live, depending on my schedule. And we'll go through the assignments, I'll review each, just like I did before, so we go through more detail. I'm just trying to give you an idea now what's coming. Okay? Any questions or comments about that? How to handle your passage? Yeah.
It's best to make the connection between the explanation and the picture when we go through the verses on the explanation.
I would focus first on just explaining what's there and pointing out details.
Okay.
And then, so you paint the scene, then you'll have the explanation by the angel, the messenger, with him. And then that's when you can go through and basically exposit what he says.
Okay.
How does he explain it?
So when do we make the link to the picture?
Well, I just said that, explain, as he says, just explain it.
Okay.
And then you may need to fill in other details, but just take that, or just go walk through the passage. But otherwise, kind of don't, as you're doing the vision, don't start explaining it. Just give us the picture. But follow the text. That's what happens. He shows the picture, describes it, then he's like, what's going on here? And then it's explained. But the explanation isn't always clear either. You'll have to do some work to figure out why that's important or significant to them. But my focus is don't jump to application. First explain the picture, then what's the explanation given to for the original hearers, like what will be the significance, then move to us. Okay?
And with your example in Zechariah 5, it presupposes a lot of Old Testament knowledge, right? You talked about stone tablets,
Yeah.
you talked about the 2 sets of scrolls.
Original audience.
Right.
You have to think about.
So, again, to help us discover these commentaries.
Well, you have it. Not to be smug, but you have it. So you know the word, right? So that's why we need to be reading the Bible. And so, but some commentaries, may point out, the resources may indicate things you wouldn't necessarily be aware of. But you'll just have to discover as you go. Okay? We're in new territory here. We're not in the New Testament epistle anymore, right? We're not in the easy Christian land of the Bible anymore. We're exploring in the challenging world of the Old Testament prophet. So there'll be some difficulties there, but I think you'll learn some things too. Okay, any other questions on that? So, go back to, that's it for the syllabus. Let's go back to the first page of the syllabus. I want to do a few details on that, a couple other items, and then we'll break for lunch. Okay, so let's do this. All right, so again, format's going to look very similar here. You've got reading assignments, and I spread the due dates of those out through the whole period of time, but I would try to read them earlier rather than later, so you get more familiarity with the prophets My favorite book title in the prophets is this one, Loving God and Disturbing Men. That's a great description of a prophet. That was a really cool title. So you'll have, I think, 8 reading assignments, and then notice I've included some that are optional, meaning you'll get extra credit if you read those. They're a little bit more technical, specific, but I threw them in there for your interest. You don't have to read those. It's optional. So it'll say that in the, but you would get some extra credit if you want, but I think they're interesting reads. Especially Abner Child's. It sounds challenging, right? Multitextuality, a study of intertextuality, authorial logic, and exegesis. Opening the door of the question. Okay, that sounds a little technical. But actually, it's an interesting paper. He really talks about how the New Testament, actually all biblical authors, their hermeneutic is exactly the one we're following. That they recognize the same principle of single meaning, authorial intent that we do. And he shows that. He wrote a book detailing more. It's really, really helpful. And in it he explains Matthew 2:15, I think, a little bit, among other things. And then that passage, Matthew 2:15, I put an article there that just kind of wrestles with that, because that's one of the most difficult ones. Okay, so again, optional, but they're there, they're on Canvas. Then you'll have the exegetical assignments. Again, we have 2 passages that you're going to be dealing with. You have one from Zechariah, one from Revelation. You okay? You want another one?
We only want one.
Okay, so again, same steps, the book level, then the prophetic passage analysis, diagram observation, word studies, exegetical idea, and then that's for the exegetical part. And then we've got the exposition part, so that'll be where you do your homiletical idea and then the sermon document. Okay? And then you'll preach those 2 messages in the next module.
All right.
Okay?
Number 1.
Alright, so those are all laid out. I just uploaded the assignments on Canvas, so they should all be there. Put the due dates in accordingly. Alright, and so the assignments are all going to have the same format, where I give you the assignment, the instructions, then I give an example, and then space for you to do yours. So hopefully will make sense. Okay, so any questions on that? Now, I think all of you are in Canvas, so that's good. But not all of you have enrolled. There's still some of you that have not yet enrolled. So I went ahead and I resent this instruction document. It's got instructions of how to enroll. There's nothing new. We've done this before in the other 3 modules. But again, you need to enroll. And I would suggest trying to do it today so that if there's a problem, you've got guys here who can help you with that. All right? So I put the specific instructions, what to fill out. Now again, we have the challenge with the tuition. As I said at the beginning of the week, it's been raised to 5,000 pesos, but you don't have to pay all of that. Right? Because you're in an earlier dispensation, you're a previous group. So there's a scholarship available to you. You just needed to pay the 3,000. The other 2,000 you can get by a scholarship, but you have to apply for it and receive it. Okay, and there's accounting reasons that Tea's doing this. You know, why didn't they just charge 3,000? But there needs to be some consistency as far as we report back to TMAI and we report our costs. And so it's easier if we the student paid this amount and then they received this amount of scholarship. So they know it cost $5,000 for the class. But, so that's the reason. So it makes some more steps for you, and I apologize, but it's actually important to do this. So you've paid $3,000 already. I think everybody paid. And you received the receipt.
Yes.
So what you'll do on the enrollment, there's a spot that says on there for the upload a picture of your receipt. So do that, but then you'll also need to apply for the scholarship. You'll receive that email with the scholarship. You need to also submit that as a second picture so that each of you have on your file paid $3,000, scholarship $2,000. So that's covered. So again, I'm sorry for the extra work, but the option is you can just pay the $5,000. It's up to you. You don't have to apply for the scholarship. Then you can just make the donation to Taya, $5,000. All right, so I gave the instructions. The scholarship is in a separate form. Okay, so there's one form for enrollment, one for scholarship. Just fill it out. And on the scholarship, you're going to want to note these things. It's July to December, right? Because it's from now till the end of the year. That's this module covers. It's preaching 4. And it's a special scholarship. I think it's pre-approved now, it says. They changed it. It's special pre-approved scholarship, I think it's called. Just it's that one. Because you're special. Okay? Again, you'll receive an email in response. Maybe not right away, because they have to process it. It may take a few days sometimes, but okay? Questions on that? Again, it's the same thing you've done before. Just please make sure you guys do this. Technically, I wasn't supposed to let you in Canvas before you enrolled. But because this is modular, I think we need to grade your sermon, so we needed to. So I'm taking risks to get in trouble for you guys. So please enroll. Yes, sir.
After we receive the email for the 2,000 scholarship, how do we upload it to?
Go back to the enrollment form, and whereas you okay, let me see if I can find
I
it.
think I haven't uploaded mine.
Yeah, you can go back to the enrollment form. If you use the same web address to do that, then it'll be all filled out. You can just add more information to it. Let me get to this. Yeah. That's the doctrinal statement. Okay, almost there. Is it? Yeah. Okay. So when you get to here, this is like the 5th or 6th page. Upload your deposit receipt. Notice it says receipt or plural. So you can upload more than one file. So let's.
For example, I have to go back and then instead of this, I'm going to fill again if it's empty.
Yeah, you can't. It shouldn't be empty if you. Right, Stanley? If you go from the same web address,
Because mine is.
doesn't it remember?
Yeah, you should remember.
Mine.
You already
Yeah, I even received the receipt and the scholarship.
uh,
One thing you can do if you contact, what's Justin's email address again?
J Brown at Expositors Academy.
Yeah, I received both the tuition receipt and the scholarship. Because I haven't uploaded.
Is it .org?
.org, yes.
Okay, so you can contact Justin, and he can retrieve your original enrollment form. And then what you can do is here, at this step, you just hit right to add file, can upload the additional receipts for the scholarship there. Okay? All right. So please make sure to do that. Now there's one aspect here, some of you guys have been asking about the Logos. So, of course, that's what I use here. I'm using the Logos tool. What has happened is TMAI has made arrangement with Logos to purchase a number of licenses to use their software, to subscribe to it. And so it's available to any student, but there's a fee associated with it. It's not the full price that TMAI pays. All right, so it's subsidized. You only have to pay a portion of it. It's I think on the enrollment form it's noted there. Was it 2,700? Sorry, give me a minute. But basically, you have access to most, I don't know how much of the library, but it's, over 10,000 resources. There's a lot of commentaries, things like that. Let's see here. But it's only it's a subscription on an annual basis. Okay, here it is. Here it is. All right, this is on the 5th or 6th page, something like that. Notice there, Logos Bible software. You guys see that? Middle of the page. It's $27.50 for the year, and it's only for current students. Okay. Again, it's a special package that Expositors Academy TMAI has arranged. And we pay actually more than that amount, but that helps offset the cost. So it has here for more details, click here, and that takes you to TMAI. So there's information there, and then Logos, you can hit the link there at Logos, and it'll give you some information there. But don't hit start the free trial, okay? What you're going to want to do is pay the amount here, which is noted later in your payments. It'll ask if you want it. So you'll pay that, and then you're going to pay it directly to the Expositors International. Okay? There's the video information, or GCash. Okay, this is separate from the tuition. Alright, this is an extra thing. You don't have to do it, but if you want to use it, it's available to you. Okay? Now normally, stay with me guys. Normally the Logos package is like, if you bought it, like the software, nowadays like $1,500 US or something. It's really expensive. Okay, so $2,700 might sound like a lot, but it's actually not too bad, given what you get. So again, that's good for a year. So this will carry you through the end of the course if you want to do it. If you do want to do it, two things: make your payment, and then contact Justin, and he'll help you get access to it and use it. Okay? Stanley, is there anything to add to this?
Yeah. Do they have access already to the ERL, the Electronic Resource Library, the EBSCO?
I don't think
Yeah, that's included. Even if they will not sign up with the Logos, they have access to the EBSCO.
Is there, can you send me some information that I can send to them? Okay. So there is alright, stay with me. Stay with me. There is an online library of books and journal articles that you can have access to. It's used by the libraries, so I have it through our TMS because I'm a student there. And you can access, you can type in like, you know, Flying Scroll Zechariah 5, and it might give you some resources that will be helpful. So I'll get the details from Stanley, and I'll put together a document and send it to you guys. Okay? All right, yeah.
With regards to the 2750, is it per module?
For the year.
For the year.
It's an annual subscription.
Okay.
So basically, it'll cover you from now until graduation.
I thought it's per module, because the last I remember is per module.
I think it's, I'll check with Stanley.
Because the last we got a discount is 25.
Oh, was it per, oh, and it was just for the mod, for the module? I thought it was for the year.
Yeah, maybe I just get 2 years. It's got 75. Because the TMI is facing discount last before.
Okay, that could be, I haven't tried it, so I don't know, because I have my own. I bought Logos back when it just started. It used to be called, I don't even remember now. I've had it like 20 years. So I don't buy the new stuff. I just, what's Lebronics, that's what it was. Yeah, so what I'll do is just, when they renew the search engine, I'll get that, because that's free. And then they try to sell me a bunch of other stuff. I just say, no, I'll take it. Because it's expensive. Even for Americans, it's expensive.
Pastor, why does it say that preaching students who graduate and settle all fees will receive the library?
Yeah, I don't know. You can ask him. I don't really know. Okay, let's keep going. Just a few more items here. So, if you are interested in this, you can contact Justin. He'll be able to answer your questions much better than me. I'm just making you aware of this. So you did this, Godwin?
Yes.
You did this before?
Yeah.
Okay. Is that something you'd recommend to the guys?
Yeah, it's very helpful.
You can afford it? Okay. Let me ask you a question. So I'm going to need all you guys. I'm going to ask Pastor Mel.
Yeah, I just talked to Richard, the admin, so the complaints was those who are paying for the logos, they have a link was sent to their email. It's supposed to fill out the form already, pre-filled when they click it. The problem
Oh, there's a link with the form?
Yes. So
when you make payment,
yes.
you get the, okay.
So they're fixing it now. So maybe we'll
So if they make payment, then they should automatically receive an email that gives the details?
yes.
Okay,
So they're just fixing, I think, this up.
okay.
And also for the ERL, the EBSCO, we'll just compile one, perhaps an Excel sheet for all the names and email addresses. We'll send it to David Chow. He'll set it up for them.
Okay. Can you send that info out or send it to me and I'll
Sure, I'll just upload
to the chat, to the group chat? Okay.
Yeah, that's I mean, commented earlier that you're supposed to send an email to your email address, and there's a link there, and when you click the link, it should lead you to a pre-filled Google form. But I think there's a problem now because it's blank, right? So when you click it, it's just blank. It's like doing it again, filling it out again. So maybe we'll later today, they're fixing it, and then So you just click again the link and then just upload that.
August 19th, 2024. So, last year,
Okay? Also too, I'm gonna check with Pastor Mel, because I was thinking about it and I'm talking to the brothers. How would you guys feel about, would it be better for you to do the next module in mid-January instead of beginning of December?
Yes.
Yes.
How many would prefer that? All right.
Or early December.
Okay, how many don't prefer that? You'd rather do December?
December, so we can rejoice during Christmas.
Okay,
And then very busy in ministry.
Yeah.
December.
And also anniversary.
Church.
in January or December?
No, in December. We will not be able to do our assignment because we're always eating.
So January is better.
December is better.
Okay, well, you got outvoted.
Or November, Pastor. November.
January.
Yeah, I think January was the majority. Because it's also better for me. And then that would be graduation in June. Later in June. So like around now, next year. So that'll give you guys an extra month. Yeah. So I think it will give you an extra month for your assignments, and it avoids Christmas season. Because right now you have less than 5 months to get Module 4 done. So, but I need to check with Pastor Mel to see if that works for the church and schedule here.
I think it's the anniversary of Living Word.
Yeah, I'll ask him though, because you're not going to celebrate the whole month, right? I'll ask him. If he says no, then we'll have to, don't call him ahead of time.
Say no, Pastor. Just
But actually, yeah, it works much better for my schedule as well. What's that? Be exempted? Where's your priorities? Okay. All right, we're almost done. We're almost done. I know you're excited. It's Friday.